Kane. Charity match season again, where we get the lads together to raise some money for a local charity. Martin Gallia Project this time around, local mental health and suicide awareness charity.
Yeah.
You've been a professional footballer for a long time. Going back to when you very first started, was there much in place to support players with mental health issues?
No. I signed for Rangers when I was 16, and looking back now, it was probably one of the toughest, darkest times. Loved it, don't get me wrong, loved it to bits, playing football and being up there, but I was away from my family as a young kid and I didn't really have anyone I could speak to. No one really at the club. And this is nothing against the club, but it just wasn't there at that time. It was just you kind of, just get on with it kind of thing. So it was probably something looking back, and I've spoken about that clubs definitely need, especially for younger players, I think, come in. But no, when I first started, and maybe only the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years, have I really seen a shift in mentality towards trying to do stuff for players and having the option to go to seek people and speak to and stuff like that I've been aware of. Maybe I've missed it in the past, but that it's been in your face maybe only the last 4 or 5 years.
At such a young age, how did you deal with that sort of pressure?
Cry. I used to go home and cry. Listen, it was tough, don't get me wrong, but I also think it's made me the person I am today. It was tough at the time, and being away from home for a long time in my career, it's been tough. But what I will say is that it did all bottle up and come up at one point, and I wish now that I regularly spoke to people more than what I did, because I didn't really. So for me, it was tough, yeah.
At what point in your career did you just think, I have to speak out, I have to get help?
Well, there was a night out I went on, and it went downhill very quick, and I was saying a lot of stuff I probably shouldn't have been saying regarding my own physical health. So that was only 3 years ago, maybe. So I think that's 11 years really that I'd played football, that I'd never really spoke to anyone or tried to look for any help, and why I just felt the way that I did for a long time. So like I said, I once obviously that happened, and my fiance, bless her, straight on the phone to people that I needed to speak to, and I spoke to people, and I'd implore anyone to kind of do the same, because I think if I'd have just sat down and had them conversations that I had when I was 27, when I was 16, 17, 18, I'd maybe not been in that position.
Do you think it would have improved your ability as a footballer to speak earlier?
100%. 100%. Other people might say no, but 100%, yeah.
So through your career, you mentioned there that you were able to speak, and you got the support that you needed. What was the main difference from when you were that 16-year-old kid at Rangers to when you were 27, 28? What was the big difference?
In terms of?
The support.
From a club point of view, I just think at clubs there's that, if it wasn't there before, do you know what I mean? There was no one in, I didn't think that any of the clubs I'd been to that you could go and say, listen, I need to speak to someone here, I'm not in a good place. I think at clubs now, if you went to speak to anyone, they'd go and get you the person that you need to speak to if that person isn't employed by the club. I think before it would be, I don't think, I might be completely wrong, I just don't think it would be there. I think it would have been a, come on, let's get through this kind of, do you know what I mean, sit down and talk to me. But that person you're talking to is not the expert, it's maybe your coach or someone that's gonna, it sounds bad, but might judge you off the back of it, do you know what I mean? And listen, football can be a bit of a bad game at times. People can use stuff against you as ammunition. So I think there needs to be a space where, and this is in society in general, there needs to be a space where people can go and talk and get stuff off the chest without judgment, and that's where I think professionals come into it.
And that's the big stigma too, because men just don't speak.
They don't at all, no.
And that's the thing about the Martin Gallia Project. It's a safe place where anyone can go down and just let off steam and speak.
Yeah, I think for me, my own personal experience, once I got everything or the majority of things I needed to off my chest, I felt I was a different person. I walked out of the room like, oh look, I'm a new man. I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. You're holding it in before, you're numb, you're tired all the time, you're feeling, I'm not saying I was depressed or stuff, but your anxiety's through the roof and stuff like that. And I don't know, I think, is it a male thing, is it an ego thing, is it a pride thing? I don't know what it is, but I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant being able to just tell someone what you're thinking. And then people will get to the bottom of it, not the bottom of it, but they ask the right questions. That's what I'm saying about professionals. Professionals are trained to ask the right questions and delve deeper into what it is. Do you know what I mean?
If you could speak to you again, if you could speak now to a 16-year-old you, what would you say?
If I could speak to me now, don't bottle it up. Don't be. I think for me, I was thrusted into an environment that I just wasn't used to. I was away from home. I didn't know who I could talk to, and I would just say, seek the person or find the person that you trust to go and say how you're feeling. I've got a three-year-old now, and I think listen, I never had my dad in my life, which is why I feel like I'd never really had that person I could talk to him to relate, because my dad played football. I felt like I could have related to him, but he was never in my life. So if my son's now in the same position, I'd like to think that he'd be in a position where he can come to me and say, Dad, I'm feeling like this. It's not went well today. I'm feeling like this, blah, 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 blah. And I can sit down and have a conversation with him. And if it needs to be further where you can go and talk to professionals or whatever, you can get that help from. Do you know what I mean? And I just think you need to have that. You need to have the right people around about you. That's what I would say as well. You make sure your circle's good.
In a training ground environment like here at the Solar campus, if you had any inkling that any of your teammates were suffering, are you confident that there's things in place for them to be able to deal with it?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I'd like to think if anyone of them was struggling, I'd be the first one to be there to have a conversation with them. Listen, I've been there. I've had my own struggles, but I think there's more to life than there is football, and I think making sure that people are healthy mentally, physically is the most important thing, because I think once you're right or on the right path between your ears, between your eyes, everything else kind of falls into place a little bit more. So I've not been made aware of anything, or no one's come to me, but I'd like to think if anyone was, especially here, I think the gaffer's quite good like that. I think he's a good human being, and I think the help would be there if you need it, and without judgment.
We're so lucky on the Wirral to have somewhere like the Martin Gallia project, right in New Ferry, where it deals directly with the people from the Wirral and the North West, because national charities, and you've seen the NHS, the wait times are just they're terrible. Without putting his business out there, what he won't know, but someone who lives really close to me is going through a hard time at the minute, and I spoke to him, was asking how I was, and he was like, I need to wait 3 weeks to speak to someone, and that's on the NHS. Now, I remember, it's no good 3 weeks, do you know what I mean? You need to in 3 weeks you might feel a little bit different, and the things that you were talking about and you wanted to get off your chest, you might struggle to get them things off your chest in 3 weeks' time. So I think the NHS is brilliant, don't get me wrong, but the wait times are a long time, do you know what I mean? So it's important you have charities like this that can be there and on a quicker base, do you know what I mean? And right on our doorstep. On your doorstep, exactly, yeah. So it's, I think charities like this and foundations that help like this are crucial. And that's exactly why we're doing the charity match too. Some great ex and current pros. Scott Davis coming down, Steve McNulty, James Norwood, current pro at Ipswich Town. Yeah. So it's great to see some big faces coming down. I know yourself, you've donated your share to the game too. It's great to see everyone coming together to raise money for this charity. Yeah, it's important. It's important that people get around it, because there is a big stigma around men's mental health, especially. And listen, it's nothing to be ashamed of. Everyone, if you speak to 99% of fellas, they'll have something to get off the chest. It's just the thing that they might not want to say. So no, listen, it's important again that people have a place where they can go to.